All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this evening show. You know, normally we don't stream this time of night, but we wanted to do a stream, have a conversation with our guest that you should see on the screen, Miss Irene Yvette. How I ended up seeing her was actually on Mr. O'Shea Duke Jackson. Duke is his middle name. If you don't know, he cusses everybody out. I enjoy it. Irene was also on the panel, the Sunday Rumble as well. So I say, hey, why don't we reach out to her? You know, she's been talking a lot about relationships. She understands it. We definitely can relate on some things from what I heard her background is. So we wanted to talk to her. So Yvette, thank you for joining us on the show today. Microphone.
Sorry.
All
Thanks for
right.
having
All right. Now you with the 18.
me.
All right. So thank you once again, Yvette, for joining us on the show today. For people that don't know you, could you tell people who you are?
Yeah, my name is Irene Yvette. I have a channel here on YouTube called Irene Yvette, and I mostly do political talk. I answer questions. I have a series called Ask a Black Girl, which is the opportunity for people to ask questions who may not have encountered our people. And yeah, I do talk a lot about relationships. I try to think of things that aren't openly discussed and discuss them.
Okay. So before we get started, the topic Ask a Black Girl. Where did that come from? What inspired that?
Because somebody in my comment section, because my platform, there are people of all different ethnicities that come onto the platform. And so somebody asked me about the N word. Why was it okay for Black people to use the word and not everybody else? And it's interesting throughout my life too, being from California, I've had a lot of white people who probably felt I was approachable. So they would ask me similar questions. I think questions that they were always curious about, but maybe weren't comfortable to ask. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to give people a chance to ask those questions, or Black people ask questions too, for our own people, just to ask questions, not just from a Black perspective, but also a female perspective.
So you were from Southern California?
I'm from North Cal. I'm from San Francisco.
Okay. All right. So with your response to that question about, the N word, and they have asked me that same question too, but I'm curious, how did you respond?
What I said was that I don't feel it's okay for anybody to use the word. I did also explain that all Black people don't use the word. All Black people don't approve of the word. But it is commonly used, especially like in hip hop culture. It's something that's used a lot, and that has nothing necessarily to do with our acceptance of it. Hip hop culture and Black culture are very different. And within the Black community, there are many different types of cultures, some of which it's more acceptable to use the word than others. But across the board, that I feel just nobody should use it, quite honestly. And I think that was the gist of my response.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we should use that at all, personally. I don't really like to advocate that usage because my thing is, when I grew up, we would use it among each other, but when you would have, the Caucasians come around, you're like, all right, you need to chill out with that because you don't want them to think, oh, it's cool, we can use it too, and then it'll become a problem. So nowadays, the younger ones, they use it all in front of everybody, and now this is why you have everybody having a pass to feel like they can use it. And then if you tell them about it, it's just a word, and they really have watered down what that really was, especially for our history. But earlier you mentioned that you was approachable. Why you feel you was approachable to people?
I don't know. The first time I thought I might be approachable was, and I talk about these kind of things on my channel, actually. I tell a story about, I taught at a Montessori school. I was a teacher's aide, I should say, at a Montessori school. This is back like in my college years. And there was, it was a Montessori school in the Midwest in a very segregated city. And the part of the city I was in was very, very wealthy. Lots of mansions, like bona fide mansions, things like that. And a lot of these children had never seen anybody Black. I didn't know that coming from California until a little boy came up to me and literally touched me. This is not even a joke. He touched me and he goes, "Does it come off?" Now, this is something like out of a movie. Like I was in a movie moment. And throughout my life, I've had instances like that with adults as well, you know, asking me, what do I think about, you know, Black people that can pass for white? Why they think I'm approachable? I don't know, probably because I seem like I'm, you know, I won't get angry. I probably seem like I'm very fair and balanced.
Like they say, the stream has resumed. Hold on, just give me a second. Oh, you see it? You see it came back?
I do see it. It's trying. It's working its way.
Okay. Yeah. It's going in and out. Lord Jesus, going in and out. I don't get what's going on. Let me try something else. Let me see. Let's stop something. All right. Yeah, it's not my connection. It's YouTube. It's YouTube. That's all it is to it. I mean, maybe they have a lot of people. No, I just think a lot of people's on tonight. I really think that's what it is. And if it's going to be like that, I'll just have to just record the conversation, just upload it if it's going to be a problem tonight. Is it still buffering on your end?
No, it looks like it's good.
Okay. Well, if you say it's good, guys, let me know. Press 1 if it's good. That way we'll continue to talk. I don't want her talking and then you guys don't hear anything.
Well, they're all saying it's all good, and they're not doing one. Okay. Oh, there we go. There go the ones.
There go the ones. So the quick. Okay, cool. Gotcha. All right. So what they were saying was earlier, she said that I wouldn't be approachable due to my size, and you said you were feminine, correct?
Yes, I just think women are more approachable than men, especially when they're feminine in appearance.
So do you think femininity, if I'm saying, hold on, I'm saying it right, I'm tongue twisted. If it's not, is that a problem today? Just overall in general with women?
Yes, I think it is a serious problem. I think women, depending on where you are not as feminine as would be ideal.
Why is that?
I think that society really is promoting a sort of androgynous sort of society where both the physical traits of people and their emotional traits are both sort of androgynous in nature, which is pretty disgusting. So I think as society works to kind of blur the lines between the genders, women are becoming more emasculated or more masculine, and men are becoming more feminized. So,
now, you think that's done by design?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the reasons I am so much against corporate-owned media because they push a narrative, and in that narrative, they really push the kind of, like I said, blurring of gender stereotypes. They push the underdeveloped female body above the overdeveloped female body. Of course, we have sort of the parallel of that where they push the exaggerated female form. So it's like completely underdeveloped or completely exaggerated. And I think they do it that way because then when you have people like transgenders and things like that, they're able to augment themselves to have the dramatic form, or they're able to stick with hormones and have the kind of underdeveloped form. And then if you notice, men and women's clothes are becoming very similar too. They're trying to put men in very feminine attire. So skinny jeans, longer shirts that are almost dresses, all of these kind of blurring of the lines. I think it's very, very intentional. And we see that sort of mindset in media, on television, on the radio, and magazines. We see it pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, because if you go shop in a men's store And then you go look around, everything is slim fit, this, slim fit that. Like, man, what the hell is this? This is a man's store. And to me, it's like you only catering to white folks because they the one got them slim, skinny, shapes. That's their thing, and let them have it. But us black folks, we got size a lot of times, or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, where's the regular fit clothes? And it's hard to find regular fit clothes in certain stores. I'll say, when did slim fit just took over in the men's section? I mean, back in the day, slim fit was more so like skater clothes, those kind of guys. But now it's just like you said. And if you say something like we was on that Rumble show, and the reason why I was getting upset with all that, well, they don't consider our feelings. They're like, man, look, I grew up in a time period, Irene, where men not even supposed to show no one that they even cry. Not to say they don't. And I remember I asked my grandpa and them a long time ago, I said, why you don't show nobody that you cry? He said, you don't let nobody see you in a point of weakness. He said, you do that alone. And that's the way they always felt. But now today we see men crying and men in their feelings. And then if I say that, I have a bunch of dudes that's going off because I can tell right then and there, like, okay, you wasn't raised with your father. I know you wasn't, because you wouldn't even care what I would say at that point. And I think that also goes back to what we're talking about, the topic, what type of man should a woman submit to? Now, do you think that kind of man will get submission from a woman?
He could get submission from a woman. It would probably be dysfunctional, though. The thing is that a hyper emotional man is unstable. I feel like men that are hyper emotional, those are the kind that are more prone to be abusive, things like that. They just completely lack self-control. A lack of self-control is something that's very common in my sex, and men are built to be the opposite of us. But with men being feminized, it's common for them to be very in their emotions, to not have the level of detachment that is healthy, common, and was the norm for men, as you were saying, for so long. Now it is, again, with the emotionality, lines that are blurred, where a man might react very similarly, to a woman, as far as how they, respond to a situation. And I think that's actually pretty disgusting and unattractive. I think if you have a choice, I wouldn't personally be in submission to a man like that, because you can't have two people in the relationship that are hyper emotional. Women were meant to be a support to men, and men balance us out. So if we are both over emotional, if we're both into our feelings, if one of us can't be the cooler head, then that's a chaotic relationship.
Yes, it is. And it's like that yin and yang thing. You can't, somebody got to be the opposite. And it's sad that you see a lot of men being feminine, and then you see a lot of women having this masculine traits. And because of all this masculine traits, that's why they feel whoring is okay. And you have women meeting men on different websites, and they don't have no problem sleeping with them the first day they met them. Now, back in the day, those dudes will hope they can get that. Now it's women that'll push that a lot more than men. So do you feel that women lowered themselves to a point now? Because that's why a lot of dudes don't want to get married, because it's like, okay, you be like Kanye crying on video talking about all these dudes and been with your wife.
Yeah, I think that society has encouraged women to think that we are just like men. Which is very interesting to me, because we are not just like men. We are definitely equal in value to men, but we are not the same. And I think women have kind of ran with this idea that everything men do, we should do. Now, I'm not saying heavy promiscuity is good in men also. What I will say is, women, when we are engaging in intercourse, we're taking a submissive stance. We're being penetrated. It's not the same thing at all. We also run a higher risk, because then we have pregnancy. And this kind of, whoredom that women are engaging in these days is very dangerous, because then it runs into other things. Then we're getting pregnant. A lot of women then are getting abortions. They're wrecking their bodies. And all of this in the name of feminism, all of this in the name of equality, all of this in the name of we need to be able to, and we need to act exactly like men in all aspects, and there can be no division. Again, just a complete blurring of the gender lines, even though there are some clear, obvious differences between the two genders.
Yes, and even that, even if you have women and men in that area is totally different too. In the area of intimacy, is that men, we can do that with no emotional attachment. A woman could say she could do that with no emotional attachment, but give her a couple of months and it just brewing all over the place. Even if she say, like, come on, let's keep it real. You have a female friend, you single, say, look, we're gonna sleep with each other until each other find somebody. You find somebody, we start sleeping with each other. Well, that deal is cool for a while, but then the woman start getting her feelings, and like, well, I want something more than this, and this and that and the third, and like, huh? Like, man, we had a good thing going. Don't mess it up. You get what I'm saying? So yes, women and men are totally different. Now, some men say that, they try to attack men who are extremely alpha male, and even those who don't measure up, like certain individuals in society, want to call black men hypermasculine. Why is the term hypermasculine attacked so much?
Yeah, I'm curious why that is a negative term. Masculinity is very beautiful, just like femininity is very beautiful. But what I think it is that if you look at, if we're going to, look at Black men being considered that way, when we look at that, we have to recognize that in European countries, when they have, full carte blanche to do what they want, they open schools where the genders are purposely blended, where they encourage boys to cry, where they encourage girls to wreck things. This is like real things that they do in their societies. We have to look at Europe being, a place that has the highest child sex abuse rate in the world. And so when you have a situation where a large group of people may be feminine. When we look at Asia, it's very common to have like lady boys, things like that. These are things that are less common in our particular culture. And so it can appear hyper masculine to people who come from cultures where such behavior is more commonplace. Whereas in the Black community, until very recently, it was like an abomination, to be effeminate if you were a male. It was considered ridiculous to be gay if you were a man. Now, that we're slowly coming out of that. So I think we'll see this idea that Black men are hyper masculine die down. But I think it's more a comparison of what people are used to and what our men are presenting. And then it's also probably a remnant of slavery, where we were considered beasts and animals. So Black men were sort of fetishized as, as being extra strong, extra aggressive, extra all of those things. So some of it could be cultural, genuinely that in our community, some of these more effeminate traits are just now creeping up and haven't historically been there. Some of it could be, especially here in the States, remnants from slavery, where it was literally perpetrated that Black men were part beast. And so they had beastly qualities, ergo they're hypermasculine.
So why is it that some women, because I see women doing this, why some women are accepting of this feminization of men? Because women can shut a lot of that down.
Yeah, women, we're our own worst enemies. I think, honestly, with feminism in place, a lot of women subscribe to that belief. I think also because we don't have healthy female role models a lot of the time, we view masculinity as a pathology, as an issue. So for example, and I talked about this in a video of mine, when you are with a man that is properly masculine, a lot of things he does, if you don't have a good reference point and weren't taught by an older woman, might read as cold, or he doesn't care, or standoffish, things like that, when the reality is he's just behaving like a man, and you're misinterpreting it because you're reading him based on if you were behaving that way, what it would mean. So it's easy for women to be tricked, convinced through common rhetoric and media that certain behaviors are problematic when actually they're not problematic at all. They're just natural ways for men who are masculine to be.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, that a man who's really masculine, a man who is domineering and controlling in a good way, not in a bad way. If he's that way, then some women didn't have their father around, and they had maybe a mom, and the mom, she was just hell on wheels, and she feels better about being in control. We have a lot of that as well in the Black community, because the single parent household has screwed up the males and the females. I mean, it's not just one sided here. Okay. Why is it that it seems like the masculinity is constantly increasing in our community, but why isn't it affecting other groups as much as it's affecting us? Why is that?
Why is
the masculinity that we see is affecting us sometime a little bit more than it's affecting other groups?
Do you mean
on the female side? On the female side, that's what I mean.
On women becoming masculine.
Yes, on the female side.
Yeah, I think, and this is the problem, even with women being in a relationship with a man who's not masculine. I think when you enter into a situation where there's not that male energy, it has to be compensated for. All right. So then you have women taking on male roles, and by then they become masculine by virtue of just the situation. So we see this in single parent households with women all the time, because they're the boss. When they try to engage a man, they might have a hard time being submissive. We also see this in relationships where the man is very feminine and indecisive, things like that. Then the woman will become the aggressor, because somebody's got to take the lead, right? So if the man's not taking the lead, then the woman will become the more masculine one, and the man becomes effeminate. If there's no man present, then the woman becomes more masculine. And then when a man tries to be present, she has a hard time backing back into her role as a woman and into femininity.
Now, you posted a video I saw today about nice guys. Let's talk about that. You was mentioning about why nice guys aren't picked as much, but we see this a lot, and I'm just pay attention to everything. These so-called quote unquote nice guys, and I don't really like that term nice guy, because you kind of sound lame. Say I'm a nice guy. I mean, who cares? But what I'm saying to that is the decent guy. I'm gonna say that much. The decent person, a hardworking guy, the guy that's not out there committing crimes, that don't have a criminal record, the guy that wouldn't go upside your head. That particular guy, right? I don't like the term nice guy. Why is it that guy gets overlooked in his beginning stages, and then 10 years down the line, he's established a business, he's established a great career, and then all of a sudden, now you want to say something to the dude, and if he's not checking for you, then it's a problem. Why is that tongue twisted? Why is that going on?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I feel like men really feel this way. Like, she picked all the bad boys, she picked all the jerks. And now, now that these guys are making something of themselves, they're finally ready to pick me. I always have picked the quote unquote nice guy for the most part. So I haven't had this problem, but this is what I will tell you, my experience talking to other women, what is really the truth. Life doesn't come with a blueprint. And there are a lot of conversations as women that we need to have with our daughters, and fathers need to have with their daughters, that people don't have. And that is laying out the lay of the land of humanity for them. Like, there are guys that only want your vagina. They're going to come at it like this. You know what I mean? These are the people that you need to watch out for. Sometimes we don't have practical conversations with our kids. So what happens is then adults grow up, and then they just go with their emotion and their feeling, especially women. Okay. So, masculinity is exciting, and jerks tend to be masculine because they want something. So they're aggressive about getting it. And so women might engage that, and everybody doesn't learn the first time that, there's a pattern that's happening. They may go a few times and go, you know what? Why am I picking this type of guy? Now, how long that takes a person, they could be 20, they could be 25, they could be 30, is what it is, before they realize, you know what? I actually need to pick better. And I think men sometimes read that as, oh, she just let everybody run through her. And now, that she's all used up and, chewed away, she wants me. No, everybody matures at a different rate. Like I said, I, got married young and picked a nice guy. When I was, going to church, my first boyfriends when I was young are sweet men, masculine, but kind and loving. It was actually very late in life that I met a bad boy. And I was able to identify that's what I didn't want pretty much right off because I had experienced something different. But everybody's path is different. Everybody learns at a different rate. Some people never learn. Some women just go their whole lives and just stick with jerks. So it's not necessarily that, they've done what they're going to do. And now that I'm ready to settle down, I'm going to pick better. Sometimes people just don't know how to pick better until life has taught them that lesson.
But see, teaching you a lesson, and this is a mistake I'm just saying a lot of women make, and I can write a book about why a lot of women just aren't married and why they're not going to get married. In the process of you learning, why couldn't you learn? And let's say you just have one child out the situation. Why did you learn 2 and 3 and 4 kids later? And then you want to backdoor to a brother who actually don't have no kids and he's doing good for himself and you're interested, but now like that's going on too.
That's definitely true. Like I said, I can't really say why individual people don't learn their lesson early on. But what I will say is this. In a situation where there are adults, if a man meets a woman and she is in a place where she can behave in a way that's appropriate to her sex, and he loves her enough to accept her and her children, then that's between those two people. And if anything, it's an advantage to the children to be in a place where two people are mentally right, to give them the lessons that they need to learn so that they don't make the same mistakes that their mother in the scenario you gave did. I think at the end of the day, it's everybody wants to pick what they believe is the best for their stage in life. So for some women, the best could be the guy with the most money. For some people, the best could be, the most beautiful woman who can't put a meal together to save her life. But our idea of what the best is changes. So for example, a lot of times guys might chase the prettiest girl in the room, and she might be useless for anything other than having sex with her and being pretty. But then those men grow up and they go, you know what? I could go with somebody who's attractive, but actually has something else. I don't need to have the finest girl who basically is a dinglehead. Again, people just mature and come to the realization after they've tried it, if they haven't been taught, which is why this is so essential, just to go back to that we teach our children about the lay of the land. We don't have practical conversations with our children sometimes. Just this is real life. This is what you're going to run into. I have daughters. I tell my daughters, men are going to tell you you're beautiful. They're going to tell you they love you. They're going to say all this stuff, but they just want to have sex with you. And this is how you avoid that. And we have to have those blatantly real, honest conversations with our kids, or they won't be prepared for the world.
Right. And I believe, just based off of what you're saying, that you more so have the belief of a traditional woman, correct?
I do.
Yeah. And I'm an extreme traditionalist myself, in every which way. So, I tell my daughters, I say, hey, y'all have to make sure you learn how to cook. I said, because you don't know how to cook. I mean, yeah, I know you know how to clean. Your mama taught you that. But if you can't cook, well, like, what good you got going on? And my daughter like, well, he gonna have to cook because I ain't being no slave. I said, well, if you got that dumb word slave, I said, then you just stay by yourself. I said, why should a man do all this stuff and you can't cook a meal? I'm like, come on. Because I told men are simple. Men like just if you could cook, you gonna stand out today more than any woman if you can cook. And this slavery, like, is that come from feminism or what? What do you mean slavery? I think that's offensive to even say slavery.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My 10-year-old daughter cooked dinner tonight, baked chicken with asparagus. She knows how to bake bread from scratch, and she's 10. So I think it's essential that we teach our girls life skills. It's good to know in general, and it's just appropriate for their sex, and it will attract the right type of man as well. But I also think the idea, just to go to your question of slavery, there's an attack on womanhood as well. Women are taught that, being a stay-at-home mom is oppressive, not a privilege. To have a man that would support you so that you can be with your children, but that's oppressive. Women are taught that carrying a child is oppressive, which is why so many want to kill their babies. Women are taught that, being in submission to a man is a bad thing. Submission is like a dirty word now. So everything that makes us, beautiful, just being soft spoken, being able to give a soft answer to things, being teachable. It's all looked at as something that's dirty and wrong. And it's so unfortunate because, womanhood is a beautiful thing. Women are beautiful creatures, and all the things that make us unique and special and able to be protected and loved and cherished by men are considered to be awful, terrible things. And I think, again, that just goes back to the desire to make a society where there's a blurred line between the sexes, and we're all literally running around like animals and beasts, having sex with, anything that moves, no matter what it is, and, killing our babies and, just complete debauchery. That seems to be the direction that society wants to push it.
Yeah, and you talk about being feminine. That was something that I always, even when I was a little boy, I always looked at women, especially grown women. You see how they would adorn themselves and how they would fix their hair and makeup and do all the things they would do, and I always thought that was just the most beautiful thing. And then you have today, some people, I ain't got to do all that. I'm not trying to do this. I'm like, well, okay, where's your perfume? Why your nails not done? I mean, why are you wearing open toe shoes and your toenails not polished? I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I was told a long time ago, you want to see how a woman take care of herself, look at her feet. That's what I was told. And if she's not taking care of her feet, she don't take care of anything else. I mean, so I grew, I'm talking in a way I don't talk normally on doing the news, but I'm just giving these guys a lot of the ways I was raised. But and also with men, men can't be sorry because we have a lot of sorry men today. Men want to go live in a woman's house. Men allowing women to give them a phone. Men are riding a woman's car. And then you get mad when she puts you out. Because if a woman's doing for you, she's going to treat you like you're her child. Just naturally. And why we also feel that's acceptable too, because we have, men who aren't being men, and that's being kind of coddled at times.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it's so crazy you bring that up because there's an attack on manhood as well. And just like all the things about being a woman have been made dirty, all the things about being a man have been made dirty. There are literally men out there that despise the idea of heading a household. They despise the idea of being a breadwinner. They despise the idea, they view their position as a burden or as somehow oppressive, or, they view women as like these horrible creatures that, just, want to leech off of them and serve them and things like that. It's like nobody can appreciate, the traditional roles we were meant to play. And I think what ends up really happening, honestly, is that you have functional, normal people with a healthy idea of male and female engaging people who are broken and dysfunctional. And they're breaking all the good people along the way. Some people start with a healthy attitude, and then they encounter, individuals who have a warped perception of how things should be. And then they get damaged from that. And then we have more warped people in the world. I always say, if I could just put a sign on the mall and send them to an island so that the people with sense and some sense of purpose and idea of how this should be could only interact with each other, we would be in such a better place. But right now it's a dangerous environment because you have men who don't want to be men, who think that it's some sort of trick, to get them to be something that they shouldn't have to be. And you have women who don't want to be women, who feel that everything about their femininity is oppressive. It's literally a world gone mad. It drives me insane. You have no idea.
Yeah, I definitely, agree with that. Now, I want to talk about divorce. Um, I don't know your experience with that. I mean, from what I heard, you went through that as much as I went through that. And do you feel that the marriage laws are keeping a lot of us from getting married? I was curious about that.
Um, I don't, here's the thing. I don't know that the laws are keeping us from doing anything. I do think, and I'm basing this on something I haven't had to deal with, okay? Because fortunately, I picked my husband well. And so the last thing we wanted to do was drag each other through court. So I picked wisely. I picked somebody who was like-minded like me, who would rather, if we could work it out on our own, that we do that. So I think that the laws can be skewed in the woman's favor because traditionally women couldn't work. There were things women couldn't do. And so the laws had to be very strong to make sure that women who may have been housewives their whole life, that they were left with nothing, to ensure they weren't left with nothing, because men were not always honorable enough to make sure that she would be taken care of. I think times have changed and a lot of those old laws have stuck. But I think more than the concern about laws or anything like that is that we have to be very pragmatic in picking our partners. You have to know who you've picked. You have to know the person you've picked. You have to be sure that the woman or the man you picked is not the sort of person who would behave that way. And that really comes into vetting your partner and not being in a rush to pick somebody, not picking somebody because, they get your nether regions going, not picking somebody because you find them so attractive. Because even if divorce happens, it's not the divorce that's the problem. It's not the laws that's the problem. It's what your counterpart will do with the divorce and the laws that becomes the issue.
I'm gonna talk about that, but I need to answer someone in the comment section. I hate when y'all say things that isn't historically accurate or even scientifically accurate. One person said that, and I was talking about the nail polish situation, and I'm talking about my opinion, right? And what I feel is being really feminine. The people you're talking about, you're saying the white supremacists, how did they come up with any beauty standards when they originally started off in the Caucasus Mountains? Like, what are you talking about? Black folks showed them everything, makeup, all that come from Africa. What are you talking about? Like you say, then they talk about, well, somebody could be natural. Okay, if you team natural and you think a woman shouldn't shave nothing, do you? I'm just talking about what I feel. Just me, my opinion is what feminine. And then these women that are extremely feminine, y'all liking their photos and doing all this mess on freaking Instagram. I don't see no woman that's natural, not wearing no makeup, no nothing, and y'all bigging up in her photos. I don't see that. And now maybe you've seen it, Irene, but I haven't seen it.
I'm not on Instagram, so I don't know. I try to stay away from that kind of thing because I think the more you engage in that kind of medium, the more, you can't play in the mud and not get dirty, basically, so there's just a lot of foolishness there that I try to avoid. But I definitely think that natural is fine. I think most men like to see their woman clean faced. So if I'm around my house, I'm clean faced. But I think also there are things that women do to adorn themselves, and that's fine too. I, condition my hair 3 times a week. I paint my nails. I don't paint my fingernails because I do dishes and I live real life, but I paint my toenails. I wear makeup and put on perfume and, lacy clothing and stuff like that. That's all adorning. At the end of the day, when you're home with your man, if what he prefers is not that, then you don't do that. But I do think it's hypocritical to say, well, I like women to be this way, but then you're lusting over and giving your attention to women who are another way. You can really move the tide of how women behave and how we carry ourselves by not promoting and giving attention to women who do that, and then we'll stop. And honestly, in the age of transgenders and gender bending and gender fluidity and all that, we might be all better off if everybody stopped wearing makeup and doing certain things. Do you know what I mean? Only because it would make it easier to tell, the real from the fake. because kind of I feel like makeup was pushed as an agenda, and more makeup, layers and layers. Like nowadays, you know, people are wearing, I mean, so much, I don't even understand it. It's so many layers of makeup, but I think that's been pushed to a point so that men who are trying to pass as women can more easily pass as women, because then they too can put on 5 layers of makeup, fake eyelashes, a wig, and all of that stuff.
Well, you know, I get what you're saying, because I think it's horrible when you cake so much of that. And I think some people think of that. You cake so much of that mess on, then you take the makeup off and like you look like, who are you? You know, like that. You know what I'm saying? I think most men would feel that's freaking witchcraft. He met you looking one way and he looking like, you know, they homeboy when you take that mess off. You know what I'm saying? They would get real pissed off. But no, like I say, it's a difference. And you may know what I'm talking about. If it's used to enhance, not make who you are. I mean, if you take the makeup off, you still look the same. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Now, some men that don't like it's fine. Don't, and like I said, it's not like my wife walking around here every day, all day in some makeup. No, I mean, you got kids. She doing her thing with making cakes, running around. But when it's time to go somewhere or do something, okay. Well, she you know, wear the makeup and all that. I mean, you know, that's just normal. Any man have a woman would know that. But earlier we was talking about the marriage laws. See, someone like me and what I went through like the horrible part. And if you a man, let's say work a decent job, the courts are gonna just throw it at you. Okay. It don't matter if you didn't even file a divorce, the courts would still throw it at you, like with the child support. They'll throw spousal support at you, and they'll tell you to still support the family and house that you're not even living in. That's what they'll do. If you don't pay this stuff, you go to jail like you're a freaking criminal. Same thing with child support. And I feel child support, you know, should be for if you're not paying. And then you're given a chance, and then now they're going to put child support on you. But you have some women that even though you have a good man, he always pays child support, I'm going to use the courts as a revenge to men. Now, how do you feel about, you know, women that do that? Because, you know, a lot of times black people talk about we need to build a black nation. But you can't build a black nation without, you know, at least the parents getting along, without weaponizing the children.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with the weaponization of children. I disagree with people who want to, you know, keep children away from the other parent. I think that's very unhealthy. It's unfair to the child. I don't disagree with child support, but I do think that if somebody is already contributing and your child is taken care of, then you shouldn't take them through the ringer. I do know that sometimes it's the case that men just really don't want to support their child, or you have cases where people have just had sex, had a baby, and so the guy didn't want the baby, but the woman didn't kill the baby, so he doesn't want to pay child support. So I think it has to be like on an individual basis. I definitely think the laws could be changed that if a person can demonstrate that they've already been supporting their child, then they should be exempt from child support. So then, you know, as long as they're keeping good records and they can show, you know, I did the school shopping here, I did the, you know, whatever it is, I carry the insurance, then they should be exempt. So I think there's some wiggle room for the laws. But I think that we kind of need the laws in place because not just men, also women, absentee parents often sometimes really don't support the children that they have for whatever the reason is. But I do think, I don't know that going to jail makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like you can't work in jail and make money to support a child in jail. So that seems very backward to me. Again, I think that there can be some adjustment in the law so that it makes sense and it's pragmatic, but it's definitely for every man and woman to play a part in supporting every child that they create.
I agree. And then that whole system itself, and I did my research way back in the day, you know, black women didn't even get that sort of thing. That was only meant for white women along the time of the poor laws when they first came here. Because women couldn't work, women couldn't do nothing. So they would say, okay, you know, Mr. White Man, you got to take care of this woman because she can't do crap. She can't vote. She can't work. And that was understandable at that point in time. But now women are CEOs now. Women, you know, have Fortune 500 companies. And you still have the laws like women can't do crap. And I heard they have a new model of child support called income share model child support. in which some states are jumping on that instead it's percentage based, which takes the revenue of the man, the revenue of the woman, they combine it with the needs of the child, then they split that. So the man only pays that split, which is more fair than the traditional where you pay 20%, 30%. Like Chris Brown, for instance, his ex-female wants to get more child support because she says that she needs extra security. But what do you do for that child? I mean, how much more Chris Brown is going to pay for that child?
Yeah, I think that that it shouldn't be a situation unless, again, the parents have worked this out together, which is the ideal situation. Like ideally, you would just want to be wise in who you open your legs up to or who you put your penis in. Like that would be like just to start. Because I feel like in some situations, you know, I'm like accountability is so necessary to know that. And this is why I feel like people take way too casual of an attitude towards sex. Like it feels great and all of that jazz, but it's a procreative act at the end of the day. And I think the promotion of lots of promiscuity with the idea that this isn't going to be problematic is very kind of warped thinking that people have. And definitely the laws need to change. You know, as you said, and I agree with, they were set in place for a time where women had a lot less rights, couldn't work, couldn't own land, couldn't do a lot of things. Above all, if we're talking about protecting ourselves as the system is, before, you know, move can be made for the laws to change, the first step of protection is not to give yourself out like Halloween candy. The first step of protection is to recognize no matter how fine she is, no matter how much you want it, it's not worth the stuff that comes with it. So just take your time, be pragmatic, pick wisely, value yourself, value the person that you're with, make sure they value themselves, talk to them, make sure you guys are on the same page, discuss what would happen if they get pregnant, discuss what would happen if things don't work out, you know, be an adult. And then, you know, you can even protect yourself as the system stands. But definitely the system itself needs some retrofitting in many, many ways. And what that would look like, you know, just really depends. I feel like those are things, you know, while we're pushing for a lot of silliness and laws that don't matter, those are things that and causes that people can really get behind that can be advantageous, you know, to a greater number of people. Because definitely, yes, men often do get the short end of the stick in that situation. And I think it's because often the children are going with the mother and other things like that. But again, just to reiterate it, it starts with your decision and what you choose to do with your body and who you're choosing to do that with.
Now, a lot of people, and you even said it just now about, oh, you need to, you know, kind of be responsible for who the person you pick. Well, what if you feel you picked a good person and then you even have conversations, say, hey, if something was to happen to us, you know, I mean, we would be adults about it. You know, say not say it's gonna happen, you just having a conversation. Oh, I would be like that. I mean, like I can't stand women that do that sort of thing and assuring you that would never happen, okay? And then the moment y'all have a breakup years down the line for some reason, the exact same thing that she said she would never do, talks about other women doing, she doing the exact same thing, putting you on child support, treating you ugly, and you like, I thought she wasn't going to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought we have that discussion just to make sure, you know, I'm picking the right person. So it's kind of hard to say, yo, you should have picked better when somebody never gave you indicated they would do that.
Yeah, I think that there's always a red flag. There's always red flags with people. And sometimes we want to overlook the red flag. So when I said I picked wrong at least one time, right? Mm-hmm. Early in that relationship, there was a red flag. There were a lot. And there were just red flags. And I just personally chose to ignore those red flags. And that situation didn't go well because I chose to ignore the red flags. So I think there are always some red flags in situations. I also think this. I think that it's more than just a conversation. I think it's really getting to know a person and analyzing how they really handle things. See, people will show you themselves because, you know, initially we're all trying to put our best face on. We're all trying to, look, and act the best we can. But people can't hide who they are forever. So again, this is all about not being in a rush, taking your time. There's no, obviously you could do all that and something still go wrong. But I think if everybody who finds themselves in this situation is honest, they can honestly say they didn't really do their due diligence, okay? Like, you know, they didn't really take the situation as seriously as they could. They didn't really have as many conversations on the topic if they could. They didn't really try to, you know, see how this person handles certain situations. How do they behave when you're upset at them? You know, if a woman is triggered, and you know, when you guys are having an argument over something small, she's probably not wife material, because what's going to happen when you have an issue over something big? You know, so sometimes it's not as obvious as just approaching it head on, but it's really the skill of getting to look at the little signs, because how a person handles the little things really tells you how they might handle the bigger things. And that's why you just have to take your time and be careful. And then if you find yourself in that situation, just saying, if the laws are as they are now, we don't have changes in the laws. If you find yourself in that situation, then you do as much buffer work as you can. So let's say you're a man, you find yourself in this situation, you automatically just start depositing money into her account. Do you know what I mean? Just automatically start doing it. Just automatically, you know, do a little school shopping for your child. So whenever she does drag you into court, you can point out the bad guy real easy. You can say, hey, look, judge, that automatically I was doing this. I don't even know why we're here. I feel that she's harassing me. You know, this is the expenses for our son when, you know, we were in the house together, and this is what I'm doing now. And, you know, so I think in that sense, when you do get caught up in that beast, let's say you really have done all you could, then it's time to be pragmatic and wise about how you handle the situation, keeping a cool head, and looking at where might this go, and how can I protect myself?
Well, from personal experience, when you bring up things like that to judges, you know what they tell you? That's what you're supposed to do. You're not like telling me anything that's special. So when you're a man in the courtroom, trust me, even you a man that has, you can have men that have a lot of money, and I've seen it. Oh boy, I've seen it where the woman come there and say, I need more spousal support. I need $12,000 spousal support a month. And I mean, this woman was looking like $1 million coming in that courtroom. I'll never forget that. And it was a white couple, so because people gonna ask that. And I mean, she arguing, and they end up giving her $12,000 a month spousal support on top of the child support. So they don't care nothing about you as a man. But the red flags, I agree with you about the red flags. A lot of times when you fall in love with somebody, you overlook that. And so one of my main things that I wouldn't put up with from no woman is lying. Because in my previous situation, I didn't pay attention to the lying. I didn't pay attention to the immaturity. Didn't pay attention to the lying, immaturity, and emotionalism. That's like three things, main things. And also, you're not going to be asking me when I'm going or checking my phone like that. If you can't trust me, then you'll need to be with me. But yeah, those four things for sure. Can't deal with that, because, you know, the worst thing you can deal with is a woman that lie about toothpaste. You get what I'm saying? It's like if you lying about toothpaste, what else you gonna lie about? You're immature. You can't handle problems. And I think that's the worst thing ever is a woman that's so immature.
That's so true. If you and that's exactly what you're saying is so true. Women are emotional, but if you can't diffuse her without beef, that's not the chick for you. No matter how much you love her, like just back away, you know, from the disaster. If a woman is not, and I was saying this, you know, in a video I made for women about picking, you know, their man. A man who's worth having is gonna want to know all your business. He's gonna want to know everything. He's gonna be in your closet, your pantry. He's gonna want to meet your family. He's gonna want to know your life story. He's gonna give you the side eye if you act like you don't want to answer a question. He's gonna want to know everything. And men should be looking for women that are willing to be open. Bad, good, or indifferent. It doesn't mean you have to be a perfect chick. It doesn't mean you have to have done everything right. The thing is that transparency. The transparency is essential. And if a person won't be transparent with you, then it's not a person that you can trust. That's not the woman for you. It's not going to be the one for you. And so, again, this goes to, having these conversations, because a lot of people weren't taught this. So if you don't know, then you have to learn the hard way to look out for that in the future. But see, you do know, like, as far as like the court thing goes, again, it's not something that I had to go through when I, left my marriage, but it's one of those things that in the beginning, like you're saying, if you catch those red flags, if you're vetting a person and something feels off, address it head on. And if it can't be flushed out, then it's a wrap for that. And you just have to accept that, because our feelings, feelings will betray you.
Oh Lord, yeah. Yeah, they will. You better stick to logic and reasoning. I tell men that logic and reasoning, even in your relationships, don't be on those feelings, because those feelings, they are very, very deceptive. I mean, they really, really are. Irene, could you before we wrap up, could you tell us exactly where your YouTube channel's at, how we can get to it, and what content we gonna see on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my channel is Irene Yvette, and the content really varies. I do political content, but I kind of go by the climate of the people who are subscribed to my channel. So the things that they seem to be moving toward, or things that they bring up, those tend to be the videos that I make. So yeah, I like to take a pulse. I have a lot of really strong heads on my channel. And so as they're commenting and talking, and I try to talk to as many people as I can, I make content just based around what I hear them talking about, and giving my take on those things. So right now we're doing a lot of relationship stuff, because that just seems to be the pulse of what, they're looking for right now. But also other things I like to talk about, and I plan to talk about in the future, are things like what freedom looks like in modern society, discussing things like the Social Security Act, pointing people to places, where they can really understand how our society works, how you obtain freedom for your children. Because a lot of us were kind of built into systems where we got birth certificates, Social Security cards, things like that, and got locked into a system and can't get out. What it means to, choose to opt for a different path. So maybe incorporating your name, things like that. What laws are actually in existence. How do you obtain a passport if you don't have a birth certificate and Social Security card? What makes you an American citizen? Things like that. So, staying away from media. So those are the things that are near and dear to my heart. But then I also make sure that I address, the topics that seem important to the people that are subscribed to my channel as well. And topics that are, just common fodder, like political things and things like that, to pander to Google's algorithms. Not so much that I care, one way or the other about a lot of the topics, but, you play the game, and then you try to introduce things that are more useful and beneficial to people on a broader level.
Now, do you you mentioned passports? Do you believe that a lot of Black people should start, going to the continent of Africa, visiting, or even going back and forth, like staying so many months and coming back here?
Do I believe that they should do that?
Yeah.
I know people that do that. And I think it's okay. I think that as a people, we need to get out in the world more, because the world is becoming very global. My eldest child speaks 5 languages. And I think that, there is an exposure in Europe. Travel is so inexpensive that they travel a lot. And I feel like we are very disadvantaged as Americans, and then as, a people, where we are not doing that. So we don't have a rounded worldview. And it's very essential that we get that worldview, because at the end of the day, to compete, we have to understand how to compete on a global level, not just a local level. So, yeah, I don't see a problem with it. I think that that's fine. I know people that leave the country, several times a year for months at a time. So
Yeah, I agree with that, because I remember the first time when I was in New York and I seen some people from New Zealand in this little comedy club, and they was talking about they was on holiday. So I'm like, what is holiday? So they was explaining that they get like 6 weeks off from their job at a time. And on holiday, they just travel everywhere on holiday. And you lucky in America to get 2 or 3 weeks off on a job. You know what I'm saying? And they may be fussing about you taking too much in a row. And that's why when I went to Ethiopia, Irene, I was like, America's oppressive. Like, man, it's like they oppress everything that we do. I mean, like, we are so micromanaged in this country. Like, for everything we're micromanaged. Like, we don't have no freedom. I mean, none of us do. And I'm like, I would love to be off. You know, like most people I know that work a job would love to be off 6 weeks at a time.
You know, it's so funny. And people don't realize, you know, there are a lot of things you can invest your money in. So I don't have TVs, but I know people pay, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just guessing from what I've heard people say, you know, 100, 200, sometimes more a month for cable television. Or, you know, invest money like just in different places that could be cut short. So if you cut those things short, you can really broaden your horizons and go and do more. And a lot of places are cheaper to travel to than you would realize. You know, start someplace small, you know, where you can go and the cost is a little bit lower. Try to do those things because it's so important, one, that you have a more rounded view, because I think, you know, you'll be more pragmatic about what you do in your day-to-day life when you've had more exposure and experience. You know, every person and every situation won't seem novel and exciting to you. And also, just because, you know, when you're so focused on, you know, narrow things and just passively, you know, having experiences such as television and music and things like that, you miss out on the real world and on real life. So forget the concert, forget the cable television, you know, get a cheap talk and text plan on your phone and get yourself a passport and start just taking little trips, especially if you're single and you don't have anything else to do with yourself. Get out in the world and explore and get a broader sense of what there is to offer. Network yourself. That opens doors for you. And you can do things and be outside of the box and maybe even go the entrepreneurial route. See what you're good at, what you have to offer. And you don't have to be beholden to a job per se. If you are creative and determined and you think outside of the box, just think outside of the box. So few people are doing it, you'll definitely be successful.
Now that I agree with.